What if everything you've been told about toughness is actually destroying your power? Think about that for a second. All your life, you've been told to be strong, never show weakness, stand unshakable no matter what. It sounds like a path to respect, to leadership, to control. But what if that image of toughness is nothing more than a mask, one that robs you of the very power you are desperate to build? Picture the people our culture worships. The CEO who never bends, the politician who speaks with iron certainty, the father who shows no emotion, the friend who hides every crack of vulnerability. They look untouchable on the outside, but behind closed doors, they are often the most fragile, exhausted, and hollow of all. They collapse under the very weight of the armor they built. Machiavelli's warning is subtle but devastating. Power that relies only on toughness is not power at all, it is theater. It's an act that eventually destroys the actor. Because when you make toughness your identity, you stop listening, you stop adapting, you stop being human. And a power that is not human cannot last. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Society has tricked you into equating toughness with strength. But real power doesn't need to scream, doesn't need to posture, doesn't even need to prove itself. Real power is quiet. It observes. It bends when it must, and strikes when it chooses. And those who cling to the illusion of toughness, they don't frighten others for long. They eventually break themselves. So the real question is, are you chasing an image of power that will ultimately destroy you? Or are you willing to learn what authentic strength actually means? If this message already resonates with you, take a second right now to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when I release the next video, filled with insights that challenge the way you see yourself, power, and the world around you. In America, toughness has become a cultural idol. We are told that strength means never bending, never hesitating, never admitting weakness. The stories we celebrate, the powerful CEO, the fearless soldier, the stoic father, are all stitched together by the same thread: unshakable toughness. But when you look beneath the surface of these stories, what you often find is not true strength, but exhaustion, disconnection, and collapse. Let's begin in the corporate world. Imagine a CEO who has built an empire on the perception of being ruthless. He speaks with absolute confidence in board meetings, cuts down anyone who dares to question him, and refuses to admit uncertainty. At first, he's admired. Investors describe him as decisive, a man who gets things done. But slowly, the mask starts to crack. Innovation dries up because no one feels safe to speak their mind. Talented employees leave, taking their creativity with them. Competitors adapt to changes in the market faster, while he clings to old methods. Because admitting he was wrong is impossible for a man who has built his identity on toughness. Eventually, the company stagnates and falls. His downfall isn't caused by softness or weakness, it's caused by the illusion of toughness. Now step into a different story, a family. Picture a father who has been taught that emotions are dangerous, that real men don't cry, and that being strong means being cold. He never tells his children he loves them, because he equates love with vulnerability. He never apologizes when he's wrong, because he thinks that would weaken his authority. At first, his children respect him, or at least they fear him. But as the years pass, they stop confiding in him. They learn to hide their own feelings, to keep distance from the man who should have been their protector. His wife, weary of years without emotional intimacy, drifts away. And one day, he looks around the dinner table and realizes he has power but no connection, authority but no love. His family respects his toughness in words, but in reality, they live as strangers under the same roof. These aren't isolated stories, they are symptoms of a culture. The grind culture in America glorifies endless work, endless resilience, and endless suppression of anything that might look like weakness. Rest is labeled as laziness. Admitting doubt is considered failure. Showing vulnerability is treated as a liability. Every slogan reinforces the same illusion: no pain, No gain, hustle harder, winners never quit. And beneath this toxic worship of toughness lies a silent epidemic, record levels of anxiety, depression, loneliness, and burnout. Look at our students. Many of them are praised for pulling all-nighters, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline, working themselves into exhaustion to prove their toughness. But by the time they graduate, they are already burned out, uncertain of who they really are, living on the edge of collapse. Look at our soldiers told to tough it out, even after returning from battle scarred with trauma. Many are abandoned to silence, their pain hidden beneath medals and discipline. Look at women in the workplace, told to be as tough as the men if they want respect. They learn to silence their natural intuition, empathy, and emotional intelligence just to survive in environments that equate humanity with weakness. The tragedy is this: the pursuit of toughness often erases the very qualities that make us powerful. A leader who refuses to listen cannot adapt. A father who never shows tenderness cannot inspire true loyalty. A worker who pushes through every sign of burnout cannot produce greatness. The very toughness that was supposed to make them strong instead makes them brittle, unable to bend, unable to evolve. But maybe you've felt this in your own life. Maybe at work, you pretended to know the answer even when you didn't, because you thought admitting uncertainty would make you look weak. Maybe in a relationship, you swallowed your sadness, hiding your tears, because you thought strength meant silence. Maybe with friends, you laughed along when inside you were crumbling. That is the trap of toughness culture. It teaches us to wear armor so heavy that it slowly crushes us from the inside. And it doesn't just harm individuals, it harms society. We have created a nation of people who look unshakable but feel empty. We glorify leaders who are tough on crime, tough in negotiations, tough in business, while quietly ignoring the human cost of such posturing. We tell our children to man up instead of teaching them to understand their emotions. We treat vulnerability as a disease, and then we wonder why so many of us are lonely, disconnected, and depressed. Machiavelli, writing in the violent world of Renaissance politics, understood something we've forgotten. Power without strategy, power without adaptability, is an illusion. He never worshipped toughness for its own sake. And if he could look at our society today, he might say, "You've mistaken theater for strength. You've mistaken the mask for the man." The truth is, toughness is not the enemy. There are times in life when resilience, discipline, and decisiveness are necessary. But when toughness becomes the entire identity, when it is worshipped as the only path to strength, it stops being resilience and becomes fragility. Because no mask can last forever. And the harder we cling to it, the more we shatter when life tears it away. So ask yourself honestly, are you living a life of true strength, or just performing toughness for an audience that will never be satisfied? Are you building authentic power, or are you slowly destroying it under the weight of the armor you refuse to take off? That's the deeper warning. Toughness, when worshipped as the highest virtue, doesn't protect power, it corrodes it. And if we continue to live this way as individuals and as a culture, we will keep breaking under the illusion of being unbreakable. When people hear the name Machiavelli, the first images that come to mind are usually ruthless kings, cold-blooded politicians, and manipulation without conscience. The word Machiavellian has even become a synonym for cruelty and deception. But if you stop at that caricature, you miss the real depth of his message. And it is precisely this misunderstanding that has shaped centuries of leaders who confuse toughness with power. Niccolò Machiavelli lived in one of the most dangerous political landscapes in history: Renaissance Italy. He saw governments rise and collapse overnight, kings executed, and alliances shattered by betrayal. His book, The Prince, was not a manual for cruelty. It was a survival guide. He wasn't celebrating ruthlessness. He was explaining how fragile human power could be when it relied on illusions. This is where his most famous and controversial line comes in. It is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both. On the surface, it sounds like a call to brutality. But in truth, Machiavelli wasn't worshiping fear. He was warning us that love alone, without respect, can be fragile. Leaders who rely only on affection often crumble the moment loyalty is tested. But the same is true in reverse. Leaders who rely only on fear eventually face rebellion. Machiavelli's genius was in showing that power cannot depend on appearances or masks. It must be rooted in reality, strategy, and adaptability. Now compare this insight to our modern obsession with toughness. Many people believe that by projecting toughness, never admitting doubt, never bending, never showing emotion, they are embodying Machiavelli's wisdom. But this is the exact opposite of what he intended. Toughness as a mask is not a strategy, it is performance. And performance is fragile. A truly Machiavellian leader isn't the one who shouts the loudest or refuses to show weakness. It is the one who understands human nature so deeply that they can adapt to it, shape it, and influence it. They know when to appear tough and when to appear merciful. They know when silence is more powerful than a command, and when vulnerability can be turned into connection. This is not fake toughness. This is authentic power, flexible, rooted in awareness, untouchable because it is real. But here is the trap. When toughness becomes your identity, you lose flexibility. Machiavelli wrote about Virtue, kind of excellence in navigating the unpredictable forces of life. True virtue is about resilience, adaptability, and foresight. It's not about pretending to be made of stone. If you're only tough, you are rigid. And rigidity breaks when life applies enough pressure. Think of the leader who insists on always being feared but never respected. Eventually, his people stop following him out of loyalty and begin plotting his downfall. Think of the father who insists on control but never on connection. Eventually, his children obey him with their actions but abandon him with their hearts. Think of the entrepreneur who clings to outdated strategies because admitting failure would crack the illusion of toughness. Eventually, the market destroys him. Machiavelli would not call these people strong. He would call them blind because they mistake the theater of toughness for the reality of power. Authentic power doesn't need to scream or dominate every situation. Authentic power can step back, adapt, and redirect when necessary. It can use toughness when required, but is not enslaved to it. That is why Machiavelli's writings remain so relevant. He was not describing how to appear powerful, but how to become powerful in the midst of chaos. And yet, society keeps misunderstanding him. We have created entire systems of leadership training, corporate culture, and political strategy based on the mask of toughness, when in reality, Machiavelli was warning against it. He saw that leaders who cling to appearances, whether of kindness or of toughness, inevitably collapse. The only sustainable path is authenticity, built on a deep understanding of human nature and the courage to face it without illusion. So when you hear that famous phrase, "It is better to be feared than loved," remember this: Machiavelli wasn't glorifying fear. He was reminding us that masks don't last. Whether you wear the mask of the benevolent saint or the mask of the ruthless warrior, both will crack if they are not backed by authentic power. And authentic power can only come from awareness, strategy, and the ability to see yourself and others clearly. That's the heart of Machiavelli's warning. Toughness may look like power, but when it becomes your mask, it destroys the very thing you are trying to protect. Machiavelli warned us that toughness can destroy authentic power when it becomes a mask. Centuries later, Carl Jung explained why this is true in the language of psychology. He called it the persona, the mask we wear to fit into society. The persona is not evil in itself, it is necessary. Without it, we could not function in public life. But when the mask becomes the self, when we identify entirely with it, we lose contact with our true essence. And nothing erodes power faster than losing yourself. In today's world, toughness has become one of the most common personas. It is the face of the CEO who never admits fear, the athlete who hides pain, the soldier who buries trauma, the parent who refuses to show love. On the outside, they appear strong. But on the inside, the disconnection is devastating. Jung believed that repressing parts of ourselves does not make them disappear, it drives them into the unconscious. And whatever we repress rules us. This is why people who obsess over appearing tough often feel secretly fragile. Their anxiety spikes at the smallest sign of rejection. Their anger erupts when control slips away. Their exhaustion becomes unbearable because their entire identity depends on sustaining an image. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In other words, the more you hide behind toughness, the more life punishes you for refusing to see what lies beneath. Think about burnout. It is one of the silent epidemics of our time. Why do so many professionals crash? Not just physically but emotionally. Because they wear toughness like armor. They refuse to rest. They refuse to admit they are tired. They refuse to acknowledge their limitations. And so the unconscious speaks through the body: panic attacks, depression, numbness. The persona of toughness has destroyed the authentic self inside. The same pattern repeats in relationships. A person hides behind a mask of indifference to avoid getting hurt. They think this makes them powerful, untouchable. But in reality, their inability to be vulnerable starves their relationships of intimacy. They never connect deeply because their mask won't allow it. Eventually, partners leave, not because the person wasn't tough enough, but because they were never truly present. Here lies the paradox. The more you cling to toughness, the weaker you become. Toughness without authenticity creates hollowness, and hollowness cannot sustain power. Jung called this the tragedy of living only through the persona. It grants social acceptance, but it robs the soul of meaning. And without meaning, no amount of toughness can hold you together. So what does authentic power look like? It is not the absence of toughness. It is the integration of toughness with vulnerability, silence with speech, and strength with adaptability. Authentic power knows when to stand firm and when to bend. It does not fear showing humanity because it is grounded in self-awareness, not in performance. Jung described this process as individuation, the journey of becoming whole. To individuate is to bring the shadow into light, to face the parts of yourself you deny, and to integrate them. For someone trapped in the mask of toughness, individuation means admitting fear, allowing vulnerability, and embracing imperfection. At first it feels terrifying, but in the end, it creates a kind of strength that no mask can imitate. Think of water. A rock is tough, but water wears it down. Water is flexible, adaptable, and able to take any shape and flow through any obstacle. True power is like water. It does not need to pretend, it simply is. Machiavelli saw this in politics. Jung saw it in the psyche. And both warn us of the same danger. Toughness, if clung to as an identity, becomes your prison. This is why so many people today feel anxious, empty, and disconnected. They are not weak. They are trapped in the illusion that toughness equals strength. They live through their persona and confuse it with their self. But the soul knows. The soul screams when it is abandoned. It speaks through depression, through fatigue, through that quiet sense of something missing. And it will not stop speaking until you listen. Authentic power is born the moment you stop performing toughness and start embracing the full range of who you are. Because only then do you become whole. And wholeness, not the mask of toughness, is what terrifies people, commands respect, and sustains real power. For most of your life, you've been told that strength means hiding weakness. That to be powerful is to appear untouchable. But here's the truth. Real power doesn't come from pretending to be unbreakable. It comes from knowing yourself so deeply that no mask is needed. This is the shift, moving from toughness as performance to strength as authenticity. And it begins not with more effort, not with more grinding, not with another motivational speech telling you to push harder. It begins with a radical act of honesty, admitting that the mask you wear is killing you. Think for a moment. What would happen if you allowed yourself to admit that you're tired, instead of forcing yourself to push through exhaustion? What if you said, "I don't know," in a meeting, instead of pretending you had all the answers? What if you told someone close to you that you were scared, instead of burying the fear behind silence? Society tells you that this would make you weak, but in reality, it makes you free. Because the moment you drop the mask, you reclaim the energy it takes to maintain it. That energy becomes yours again. Carl Jung believed that suffering was not a mistake, but a signal. When you feel the emptiness, the anxiety, the depression, that is not weakness. That is your soul calling you back home. It is telling you that the life you're living is not yours. And the mask of toughness, though praised by society, is suffocating your essence. The first step toward authentic power is to stop ignoring that call. So how do you begin? By practicing the opposite of what toughness culture has taught you. Instead of always being available, learn to withdraw. Instead of always reacting, practice silence. Instead of always hiding pain, learn to name it. These are not signs of defeat, they are signs of maturity. Think of the most powerful people you've met in your own life. Were they the loudest? Were they the ones constantly proving themselves, constantly demanding to be feared? Or were they the ones who carried a quiet presence, a sense of depth, a confidence that didn't need to posture? Real leaders, real creators, real individuals radiate authenticity. They don't wear toughness as armor. They carry strength as their nature. This is not easy. Dropping the mask can feel like death, because for years you have been taught that the mask is who you are. But as Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Authentic power comes when you face your shadow, your fear, your vulnerability, and integrate them instead of hiding them. In practical terms, this might mean allowing yourself to rest when your body screams for it. It might mean setting boundaries, saying no, even when people expect you to be endlessly available. It might mean choosing depth over appearance, listening more than talking, valuing presence over performance. These are not the glamorous traits of toughness culture, but they are the foundations of authentic strength. Machiavelli would have called this strategy. Jung would have called it individuation. You can call it awakening. Because what it really is liberation from the exhausting performance of toughness into the quiet, unshakable presence of authenticity. Imagine a world where more people live this way, where leaders built power not on fear or fake toughness, but on clarity, adaptability, and genuine connection. Where families were led not by cold authority, but by strength rooted in love. Where individuals pursued excellence not by burning themselves out, but by aligning with their true nature. This is not naive. This is the only path forward, because the mask of toughness has already shown us its cost. Loneliness, emptiness, collapse. You don't need to wait for a breakdown to learn this. You can begin now. Start small. Notice when you are performing toughness instead of being yourself. Notice when your silence is protective rather than authentic. Notice when your anger is just fear in disguise. Each moment of awareness chips away at the mask until, finally, you stand face to face with yourself. That is authentic power. And once you touch it, you will never want to go back. So here we are, at the edge of the question that has haunted us since the beginning. What if toughness, the very thing you thought made you strong, has been destroying your power all along? You've seen the stories, the CEO who lost his company because his toughness blinded him, the father who lost his family because his mask cut him off from love, the society that looks tough but is quietly collapsing under depression, anxiety, and loneliness. These are not failures of weakness. They are failures of illusion. They are the inevitable result of worshiping toughness as the highest virtue while abandoning authenticity. But you do not have to keep living this way. You do not have to keep sacrificing your soul to maintain an image. At any moment, you can choose to lay down the mask, to stop performing, to stop grinding yourself into emptiness just to meet society's definition of strong. Carl Jung reminded us that wholeness is the goal of life, to bring light into the shadow, to embrace all that we are instead of hiding it. Machiavelli reminded us that appearances, whether of kindness or of toughness, cannot sustain power unless they are rooted in reality. Together, their voices echo across time with one clear message: pretending to be untouchable is not power. It is a slow death. Real power is something deeper. It is the quiet strength of someone who has faced their fear and made peace with it. It is the presence of a person who can stand firm when necessary, but also bend when life requires. It is the clarity of one who does not need to be loved or feared because they are whole within themselves. That kind of power cannot be taken, cannot be manipulated, cannot be destroyed, because it is real and the choice is in your hands. Every day you can keep wearing the mask, hoping it will protect you while it slowly drains the life out of you. Or you can choose authenticity, the path that is harder at first, but infinitely more rewarding. You can choose to stop being a prisoner of toughness and start being the author of your own strength. If there is one message you take from this, let it be this: stop wearing toughness as a mask. Start building authentic strength from within. The world doesn't need another performance. It needs your truth. If this video spoke to you, if it stirred something deep inside you, don't let the moment pass. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next video that could awaken something within you. And in the comments below, share the part that resonated with you the most. Was it the story of the CEO, the father, the reminder from Machiavelli, or Jung's call to wholeness? I want to hear your voice, because your reflection might awaken someone else. Together, let's stop worshiping the mask of toughness and start building a culture of authentic power.